The tuatara is an extremely unique reptile that is sometimes called a living fossil, since it is the only remaining member of an ancient lineage. As usual, a document with the sources for the images used, along with research papers I found useful, will be included in the description of this video. When asked, most people could probably give examples from 3 of the orders of reptiles. There are the turtles and tortoises and testudines. Then there are the crocodiles, alligators, and gharials and crocodilia. Crocodiles are actually more closely related to birds than to any of the other living reptiles, but that relationship might need to be explored in a later video, as they are not the focus of today's video. Along the other branch of reptiles we have the snakes, lizards, and amphisbaenians in Squamata. Okay, so that is the 3 main groups of reptiles, well, 4 if you include the birds. So where does that leave the tuatara? Well, there is actually one more lineage of living reptiles, the rhynchocephalians, and the tuatara is the only living species in this group. It may look a little like a lizard, but it is not. Rhynchocephalia is a completely different order of reptiles, although lizards and snakes are their closest living relatives. So, how are they different from lizards? There are many differences between their skeleton and other features. Rhynchocephalians have gastralia, which are rib-like bones found in the region of their stomach. Although other reptiles, like crocodilians, also have gastralia, lizards and snakes do not. Male rhynchocephalians do not have a penis or other similar reproductive organ, while lizards have 2 hemipenes. We will get into the reproduction methods of rhynchocephalians later when we focus in on the tuatara, since they are extremely unique. Another difference is that rhynchocephalians are acrodonts, meaning that their teeth are fused directly onto their jawbone. Their teeth sometimes don't have roots and do not fall out, or if they do, they are not replaced. Most lizards, on the other hand, are pleurodonts, as were the earliest rhynchocephalians. This means that their teeth are attached to the soft shelf inside their jaw, and these fall out and are replaced throughout the lizard's life. There are other differences too, but just these examples should give you an idea of how different these orders of reptiles are, despite their superficial similarities. Since I am likely not going to have the opportunity to talk about it again, let us have a look at the order Rhynchocephalia. The name means beakheads, referencing the beak-like snout seen in tuatara and other species. They first appear in the fossil record during the Middle Triassic, about 238 to 240 million years ago. For reference, the first dinosaurs also appeared about 240 million years ago, so the fact that any rhynchocephalians are still around is something of a miracle. For a modern comparison, crocodiles are also sometimes known as living fossils, but their earliest known ancestors only appeared around 200 million years ago. And the modern crocodiles we know today first started to appear only 95 million years ago. Despite using it in the introduction, I will admit to disliking the term living fossil. This is because people assume that the label suggests that the species has remained unchanged over millions of years. This is actually not what the term means. It is used because the living species show features that were more common or better known from extinct animals. However, while their order may be ancient, tuatara themselves have not been around for all that long. Comparable fossils of their genus started appearing 16 to 19 million years ago, but most remains that are definitely of tuatara are less than 100,000 years old. Despite only having one species today, the rhynchocephalians were extremely diverse, especially during the Mesozoic era, an era of time better known for the dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and plesiosaurs. The earliest rhynchocephalians were likely insectivores, something their small teeth designed for piercing hard exoskeletons would have been perfect for. However, most extinct rhynchocephalians are believed to have been generalist predators, like the modern tuatara, eating small vertebrates as well as insects. The rhynchocephalians in the early Triassic period were small, but they underwent massive diversification during the late Triassic. By the Jurassic period, they were the most dominant group of small reptiles and could be found worldwide. They ranged in size from the small Clevosaurus sectum semper, which was about 12 centimeters or 4.5 inches long, to Pleurosaurus goldfusia, which reached lengths of 1.5 meters or just under 5 feet. There are several dozen known genera of rhynchocephalians, although the exact number fluctuates depending on the study. I am certainly not going to list all of the genera, but I do want to talk about a few of them to give you an idea of their diversity. One thing that is important to consider when talking about the extinct rhynchocephalians is that since tuatara are the only living species, it would be very easy to assume that all of their features were present in their extinct relatives. This is not true, and it would be a bad assumption to make. It is important to note what features are seen in all or most rhynchocephalians, and what are unique to tuatara or their family. Clevosaurus is one I have already mentioned, as it contains the smallest known rhynchocephalian. There were other species of them, however, and they lived during the late Triassic and early Jurassic periods. They were all relatively small and are believed to have been insectivores. There are currently 9 known species, and these were found on all continents except modern-day Australia and Antarctica. They had fewer teeth than other rhynchocephalians, but these were very sharp and their jaws were strong enough to crush chitin, letting them feed on thick-shelled beetles and other insects. Homoeosaurus is a later rhynchocephalian, appearing in the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous. They are only found in Europe, with fossils from England, France and Germany. While sharing some similarities to Clevosaurus, it was believed to be a more generalist predator, eating small vertebrates as well as insects. Note that despite being found in some aquatic fossil deposits, it is believed to have been terrestrial. It is noticeable for having long limbs for its size, although it was still quite a small lizard, with most species being around 17 centimeters or 7 inches long. Not all rhynchocephalians were carnivores, some were herbivores. One such genus was Prosphenodon, which includes the largest known terrestrial rhynchocephalian. This was Prosphenodon avalasi, which could reach lengths of around 1 meter or 3 feet, although a second smaller species is also known. Their teeth slotted together, and their jaw could move backwards and forwards, which made them excellent at shredding plant material. Their remains are known from the mid-Cretaceous in Argentina. Interestingly, in the deposits where they are found, they are the most common terrestrial vertebrate, and also the only known herbivore. It is unknown why no other herbivores are known from these sites, but it does strongly suggest that Prosphenodon was a crucial species in its ecosystem. Sphenovipera was a rhynchocephalian only known from Mexico during the Middle Jurassic. Only one species has been found, Sphenovipera Jimmy's joyi. The unusual species name is actually named for the place where it was found, known as Jim's Joy in the Huizacal Canyon in Mexico. However, the reason I have decided to highlight this species is that there is evidence suggesting that it might have been venomous. It had large curved fangs with grooves similar to those seen in colubrid snakes. This means that it could have used low-pressure venom delivery to envenomate its prey. This is a way to use the grooves in their fangs to slowly deliver their venom, as opposed to something like a viper, which has a much quicker and more incapacitating way to inject venom. The research first describing the species to science also suggests Sphenovipera had weaker jaw muscles but could open their mouth wider than other rhynchocephalians, again supporting the theory that they had venom. The venom interpretation has been disputed by other researchers who have pointed out that the grooves in the teeth were shallow, the fangs were not specialized, and the gape of the mouth cannot be determined without a more complete skull. Whether or not it had venom, it is still an interesting member of Rhynchocephalia. Alright, so far you might have noticed the mention of terrestrial when talking about some of the previous genera. The reason for this is simple. There were also rhynchocephalians that were fully aquatic. One of these, I mentioned earlier, as Pleurosaurus, included the largest known rhynchocephalian. Their body, and especially their tail, were elongated, with their limbs being comparatively short. They swam using an undulating motion, similar to eels, and used their limbs to steer. It is believed that they lived in shallow waters and ate fish. One of the interesting things about looking into the rhynchocephalians is that not only are terrestrial and aquatic species known, but there are also transitional species between the two that are semi-aquatic. One of these is Vedasaurus, which are unsurprisingly most closely related to the fully aquatic rhynchocephalians like Pleurosaurus. It was first discovered in Germany in 2017 when an almost complete skeleton was unearthed. Vedasaurus was not as specialized for a fully aquatic lifestyle as Pleurosaurus, but still had an elongated tail. It had thicker bones than fully terrestrial rhynchocephalians, which likely added a ballast when diving. Their forelimbs were not as strong as those seen in terrestrial rhynchocephalians, but they would not be as weak as limbs like those seen in fully aquatic ones like Pleurosaurus. Instead, it is a clear indication of a transitional type of forelimbs that can be explained by Vedasaurus being semi-aquatic, and so transitioning between life on land to life in the water. To be honest, I could probably keep talking about the extinct rhynchocephalians, but it is probably time to move our focus to the only living species of them. This is the tuatara, Sphenodon punctatus. The name in Māori means peaks on the back, referring to the row of spines down the back of males. Tuatara are only found in New Zealand, and are in fact the largest reptile in New Zealand. Males get larger and can be up to 61 centimetres or 24 inches long, although there are some claims that some individuals can get even bigger than this. Females only get up to 45 centimetres or 18 inches. They were once widespread throughout New Zealand, but are now only found on predator-free offshore islands. On the mainland, they can only be found in Zealandia. Zealandia is a wildlife sanctuary on mainland New Zealand, near the capital city of Wellington. It has 252 hectares of land that is protected by a predator-proof fence. This lets species affected by invasive predators to thrive, which is a massive problem for many of New Zealand's native animals. Since tuatara only survive in small islands and predator-free sanctuaries, you might be expecting it to be endangered. It is not, however. The IUCN lists them as least concern, and the reason for this is that its remaining populations are stable, and there are no major threats that could change this in the near future. The global population has over 55,000 individuals, so while they are not able to survive in the wild on the New Zealand mainland, the remaining populations are actually doing quite well. Part of the issue they face is that the islands where they are found are reaching maximum capacity for tuatara, so more suitable locations for them will need to be found if their population can continue to grow. As you might expect given their distribution, the biggest threat to tuatara are invasive pests, and especially rats and mice. Deforestation and poaching would also be concerns if the islands are not so carefully managed. One of their bigger threats is actually climate change. Not only would sea level rises affect their island refuges, but increasing temperatures actually would affect their nesting. Like some other reptiles, the gender of young tuatara is determined by the temperature. For eggs incubated at or below 21 degrees Celsius or 70 Fahrenheit, they will hatch as females, while those incubated at higher temperatures will be male. So if the temperature increases enough, it would make it harder for female tuatara to be born, massively skewing their gender ratio. Tuatara have very good eyesight. They have good night vision, but also good colour vision, which is a little unusual for a nocturnal animal. Their eyes can focus independently, and also have a nictitating membrane as a third eyelid on each eye. Nictitating membranes are translucent eyelids seen on some animals that let them moisten or protect their eye while still being able to see, at least partially. Tuatara also have a third eye, sometimes called a parietal eye. This is located on top of the head, but is not nearly as developed as their two primary eyes. It is capable of sensing light, but probably cannot detect movement or form an image. While parietal eyes are seen in some other living vertebrates, including some lizards, frogs, and fish, it is most pronounced in tuatara. While the eye cannot be seen on adults, it can be seen in hatchlings as a translucent patch on top of their head. 4 to 6 months after hatching, it will become covered by scales and pigment so it can no longer be seen. Its purpose is unknown, but it is assumed to help regulate their circadian rhythm, or to possibly detect seasonal changes by observing the different lengths of day. It could also have a role in thermoregulation, but this is largely speculation, as all of these theories are very difficult to prove. They may have good eyesight, but alongside turtles, tuatara have the most primitive hearing organs among all other reptiles, birds, and mammals. They have no eardrum and no ear hole. Instead, the middle ear cavity is filled with loose tissue, which does let them hear low-frequency sounds. They can hear sounds from about 100 to 800 Hz. For comparison, humans can hear from 20 to 20,000 Hz, and our hearing is not nearly as good as something like a dog. But tuatara can only hear a fraction of the range that we can. As was mentioned with the extinct rhynchocephalians, tuatara have teeth directly fused to their jawbone. A common misconception is that tuatara do not even have true teeth, merely spiky projections from their jaw, but this is completely untrue, as their teeth have enamel and so are clearly not bony projections. These teeth do not have roots and are not replaced if they fall out, unlike most lizards. This can actually cause issues since tuatara live such a long time, as their teeth can get worn down. Once this happens, older tuatara need to switch to eating softer prey like earthworms, larvae and slugs. Eventually, they will even have to chew their food between smooth jawbones as their teeth will have completely worn away. While they only have one row of teeth on their bottom jaw, they have two rows on their upper jaw, and these overlap the lower row on either side, a unique feature amongst living animals. The structure of their jaw is also highly unusual in that it can slide backwards and forwards once their mouth is closed. This allows them to shear through chitin and bone. Tuatara are extremely long-lived. The oldest known individual is named Henry. He is still alive today and is estimated to be around 130 years old. Young tuatara take 15 to 20 years to become sexually mature, and they continue to grow until they are around 35. Their average lifespan is around 60, although, as Henry proves, they can live far longer, and it is not uncommon for them to reach 100 years old. This gives tuatara the slowest growth rate of any reptile, and although some tuataras may be longer lived, tuatara likely take second place in terms of lifespan, only behind some turtles. As is common in long-lived animals, tuataras reproduce very slowly. They nest in burrows, and while they can dig one for themselves, they will prefer to reuse an old seabird nest if one is available. Tuatara mate in midsummer. As was mentioned earlier, males lack a penis, so tuatara copulate with a method termed the cloacal kiss, where they rub their vents together for sperm to transfer from the male and into the female. This is similar to mating in modern-day birds. Females lay 6 to 10 eggs in a clutch. The eggshell is thin and papery, and they take 12 to 15 months to hatch. Females only lay eggs once every 2 to 5 years. To form the eggs, it can take females 1 to 3 years to provide the yolk for them, and another 7 months to form the shell. This gives them a very slow rate of reproduction, but this is of course offset by the long life expectancy. There also does not appear to be an upper limit for tuataras reproducing, with Henry, the old tuatara I mentioned earlier, fathering a clutch when he was 111 years old and the female was 80. Parental care is uncommon or non-existent in most reptiles, and tuatara are no exception. However, there is an interesting phenomenon observed in tuatara. Females will guard their nest, but only if they are in an area with a high population of rodents. This must be a learned behaviour, as they don't do it in predator-free areas. The first rodents arrived in New Zealand with the Polynesians around 1300 AD, and they were one of the main causes of tuatara disappearing from the mainland, which means that this is likely something tuatara have learned to do in the last 1,000 years. Both males and females will guard territories, although male territories are larger. The size of male territories will depend on the size of the male, with larger males able to defend a larger territory. Interestingly, this also means that larger males are much more affected by the tuatara tick. This is a parasitic invertebrate that has specialized for feeding on tuataras. Larger males have a larger territory, so cover more ground and also interact with more tuatara, leading to them getting parasitized more than female or smaller male tuatara. To defend their territory, tuatara will bite intruders and, as I mentioned earlier, since their teeth can shear bone, this is not really something you want to experience. As with many of their extinct relatives, tuatara primarily eat invertebrates, including worms, beetles, millipedes, spiders, and weta, a type of large grasshopper native to New Zealand. However, they are more generalist carnivores, supplementing this diet with lizards, eggs, and seabird chicks. Unlike most reptiles, tuatara do not thrive in hot conditions. While they bask in the sun like most reptiles, they do not remain healthy if exposed to temperatures constantly over 25 degrees Celsius or 77 Fahrenheit, and will die in temperatures over 28 Celsius or 82 Fahrenheit. They can remain active in temperatures as low as 5 degrees Celsius or 41 Fahrenheit, but will generally hibernate during winter. Their optimal temperatures are 16 to 21 Celsius or 60 to 70 Fahrenheit. This is the lowest optimal temperature range of any known reptile. Tuatara are nocturnal, although they will bask in the sun during the day. Juveniles, on the other hand, are primarily diurnal. It is believed that this difference is seen because adults are cannibalistic and will eat juvenile tuatara, so the juveniles try to avoid the adults by being most active during the day when the adults are the least active. I hope you have enjoyed this video. The rhynchocephalians were a large and diverse order of reptiles, despite only having a single species alive today. Tuatara are fascinating animals, with many features that are found in no other living animal. Despite their small modern-day range, they are thriving on the predator-free islands. With New Zealand's goal to eradicate the invasive predators, it is hoped that one day tuatara may be able to return to the New Zealand mainland and reclaim their historic distribution throughout the country. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.